The conversation on the need to set an agenda on improving health, safety, and secure environment for the oil and gas and other related industries gained momentum at the 2025 PSRG-Richardson H.S.S.E Forum.
Some of us that work in the oil and gas space, we are exposed a lot to a lot of toxic gases, hydrogen sulfide and the rest of them, and the level of health surveillance, maybe having hydrogen sulfide detectors and every other form of surveillance might not be top-notch, even in some organizations. So we are saying there are occupational fatalities as a result of exposure, whether short-term or long-term, because some of these things, some persons, it was when they traveled out of the country that they ran medical check abroad, that they discovered that they are like a walking corpse. Their lungs have been damaged, having been worked in an environment for a very long time. Apart from being an environmentalist and an HSE person, I also conduct audits and I've gone to several organizations. I get to some places and I see the level of exposure the staffs are, to toxic chemicals, solvents, and the rest of them. Some are working in conditions that are terrible without PPEs and the rest of them. It's terrible. Some will call me to the corner and say, please, sir, help us tell the management. And I'm like, this is where you work. This is where you put in 8 to 10 hours, some 12 hours every day without adequate protection. And because of profitability and some leaders also, business leaders don't have the idea of the damage, the long-term damage they are doing to families. Some has a lot of respiratory consequences, that we are not paying attention to. Even in our domestic environment, do you know that mere usage of paint that you use to paint your house can lead to a long-term infection or lung diseases? And that is why some things we permit here, they are not permitted in other climes of the world. For example, lead-based paint is being phased out across the world. And that's why when you go to the market now, you see eco-friendly paints. They call some satin and the rest of them a bit more expensive, but it's more environmentally friendly, and the level of damage to the skin, to the body is reduced.
At the event conversations on enhancing safety culture, rethinking SME funding at the grassroots, smart operations, sustainable waste management, and workplace hygiene shaped the discussions with recommendations.
There's a saying that if we do not take care of the people in Ajegule, the people in Ikoyi will not be able to sleep. It's the common thing. So, the issue of environmental impact, degradation without adequate remediation breeds resentment. The economic exclusion leads to youth unemployment and lack of opportunity for frustration. And frustration increases when you are inspired and you are knowledgeable, but you do not have a means of practicing what you've learned. So that's why you see professors when they are fully knowledgeable and there's no place to exercise their practical, to practicalize what they learn, they put the frustration on the students. But for those who are practically doing something, there's no basis for any problem. So there's limited participation. We know that the youth engagement reduces militancy and susceptibility. And the concept of circular economy models build local supply chain. That means you're able to get the community involved in the recycling process. It doesn't have to be the most sophisticated thing. For example, my brother sitting next to me, my twin brother here, is into robotics automation. There's nothing wrong in getting those young, unemployed people to be trained on things like artificial intelligence, to be trained on social media. It doesn't mean that they have to work for his company, but it gives them a tool to be able to survive. So they can provide things like, you can train them on how to provide security, catering, transportation to oil and gas company. We can look at environmental stewards, doing waste management, deforestation, environmental remediation. We can look at local content enablers, meeting the NCDMB regulation through community participation. We can look at tech innovators, safety solutions, drone surveillance, clean energy innovation. They may not be able to build drones, but you can teach them how to use drone for surveillance.
What are those benefits? For every project, you must define what you want to achieve. We talked about in terms of the volume. We talked about the CO2 emission, which we monitor as a company. We talked about secular opportunities, secular waste. Look at the SDGs. They are something we must ascribe to. Comply with our waste minimization policy. In LNG, we pride ourselves that before we talk about incinerating a waste, what are the opportunities that are present within that waste? And there are a lot of projects that we're currently doing apart from this when it comes to ensuring that we use our waste in a responsible manner, also as raw materials in other industries. Compliance with those things were also clear. Yesterday we talked about the carbon credit and also tax incentives. But the very important one, which I'm very much, was that we're able to get the regulators to give us a confirmation on this. Because all the standard, both the laboratory tests, compressive strength tests we did, we had to show that we said, can this be institutionalized? We don't want to do it more like a back-end discussion. This is what we are doing. We want you to be able to see and come and prove to also, we can also be more or less pace setters within the industry. Or like I said earlier, we can also be a reference material for other initiatives that will be linked to spent blasting or even other waste material. We have students of Unilag, and these are opportunities. When Falade talked about the town and the gown. These are some of the experiences where our institutions can also be they can be those tools or those research labs where we can further this conversation because the industry is here with us. We're talking about the order of entering into the other areas of oil and gas. But so this is where we have come to stay. So there are innovations, there are opportunities that we must look at.
Mr. Akin Osuntoki, CEO Richardson Oil and Gas Limited, provided insight on the choice of the theme, Nigeria, the Gulf of Guinea's energy hub, mapping the pathway, and the thematic issues raised on HSSE.
The appropriate thing is to thank God that we have held this conference and exhibition for 17 years unbroken. Even during COVID, we were here. About 17 years ago, I made a presentation in Ghana, Accra, Ghana, and then I stated that local content is good, but then it should be a stepping stone for regional content. And 17 years or 15 years after, we have gone back to the same issue. Without a doubt, Nigeria has done tremendously well since the promulgation of the Nigerian Content Act. The gains are very obvious, and I don't want to go over that. It seems to me that the time is appropriate to begin to accept that the Gulf of Guinea is actually our territory, and we should use that as a springboard for African content. I mentioned during my opening remarks, that the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, PETAN, has actually extended a handshake across Africa. Today, companies in countries in Africa have borrowed the Nigerian content development strategy from Nigeria. And jointly, we are starting the African Content Organization, which is supposed to allow countries to work together in making sure that African companies play a significant role in the development of the hydrocarbon opportunities in Nigeria. That has gone pretty well. And I think that informs the theme for this year, that we should begin to take our rightful position in the Gulf of Guinea. During the keynote speech by the very articulate, scholarly Gbite Falade, he mentioned that the resources of our neighbors is nothing compared to us. And he postulated that the right approach will begin to see how we can work with them positively in a mutually beneficial manner, such that Nigeria and Nigerian stakeholders, particularly the indigenous companies in Nigeria, are beginning to extend work throughout the Gulf of Guinea and thereafter throughout the rest of Africa. I think that's the topic of the day. And the summary is that we should move from local content to regional content and begin to position Africa for relevance in the global arena. One of the things we've decided to do, which we've always done and we will continue to do, is to make the communique of this event available to policymakers. What the keynote speaker did, you'll agree with me, was very detailed, deep research. And if any of the world-class consulting companies ever put that together, they will charge millions of dollars for it. So we will certainly not bury that speech. We will ensure that it gets to the two ministers, the Minister for Gas and the Minister for Oil, so that indeed we can continue the conversation. The audience here agreed that we had wonderful speakers, world-class speakers, if you allow me, and we agreed that all of this should be put together so that indeed policymakers get hold of them and the conversation should continue. That's essentially the benefit. It should not be a talk show. It should be input to a greater framework for the benefit of Nigeria and indeed the Gulf of Guinea and the rest of the world. So I assure you that we will make sure this gets to the last mile, as it were.
The 2025 PSRG-Richardson H.S.S.E Forum scored another major point on repositioning Nigeria's oil and gas industry and enhancing health, safety, security, and a clean environment. A major takeaway is the need for synergy between policies, legislations, and the buy-in of the private sector for a thriving oil and gas industry with safe, secure, and healthy communities and workplaces.